Welcome. I'm RBT. This is Right Brain Rants. We got a real special episode today with one of our very own, Doku, who will be joining us in a little bit for an interview and a bit of talk about this situation. So it's going to be exciting. It was a great time, and let's get after it. The MMTLP saga began innocently enough in June 2021 with the merger of Torchlight Energy Resources and Meta Material Incorporated. Torchlight shareholders received shares in the new entity MMAT, and a special dividend of Series A preferred shares were assigned to the ticker MMTLP for over-the-counter trading. This dividend was intended to entitled holders to shares in Nexbridge Hydrocarbons, a private company holding valuable oil and gas assets in the Oro Grande Basin, led by Greg McCabe. What seemed like a straightforward corporate spin-off quickly set the stage for alleged systematic fraud. Early red flags emerged as far back as November 29, 2021. Internal concerns about unauthorized trading, potential rule violations, e.g., FINRA Rule 6432 and SEC Rule 15C 2/11, and irregularities that suggested the existence of naked shorts and counterfeit shares. Yet FINRA, the self-regulated regulator tasked with market oversight, assigned the MMTLP ticker and allowed trading to continue without aggressive intervention. The build-up, price surge, short squeeze speculation, and naked short explosion. By October-November 2022, MMTLP trading volume exploded amid retail investor speculation of a massive short squeeze. As the spin-off record date approached, holders anticipated the shorts would be forced to cover, driving the price higher. Trading volume far exceeded the official outstanding shares, evidence later supported by FOIA release documents showing broker concerns about counterfeit shares and fails to deliver. This surge wasn't organic greed. It exposed a darker reality. Predatory hedge funds and market makers allegedly flooded the market with synthetic shares through naked shorting, diluting real holdings and setting up a perfect storm for regulatory intervention. The halt, FINRA's extraordinary event and theft on December 2022. In December 8, 2022, FINRA imposed a rare U3 trading halt, one of only 3 in OTC history, citing concerns over settlement ahead of the corporate action. Officially, it was to ensure orderly distribution of Nexbridge shares, but to 65,000 investors, it felt like theft. Trading stopped abruptly with no prior warning, trapping positions at peak speculation. By December 13th, the ticker was deleted, and MMTLP converted to Nexbridge Hydrocarbon shares, liquid, untradeable, and valueless in an open market. Billions in potential value evaporated overnight. Investors were left holding private stock in a company with real hydrocarbon assets, but no mechanisms to realize fair market price. This extraordinary event designated, critiques argue, protected entrenched shorts from mandatory buy-ins and a catastrophic squeeze. Ongoing despair. SEC investigations, FOIA stonewalling, and institutional gaslighting. In years since, the SEC probes have dragged on with minimal transparency. Thousands of investor letters, over 40,000 flooded regulators, yet responses were dismissive. FOIA requests seeking blue sheets, trading data, and internal communications were repeatedly denied or redacted, perpetuating despair. This mirrors broader market gaslighting. Regulators deny widespread and naked shorting despite volume anomalies, while parallels to currency debasement via endless money printing and Federal Reserve manipulation highlight systematic collusion. Just as unaccounted trillions vanished in fiscal mismanagement, MMTLP holders see their wealth debased through counterfeit dilution. Declassified programs like MKUltra reveal historical precedents of induced psychological despair through subversion and denial. Here, constant regulatory dismissals, no evidence of fraud, they say. Move on! Erode trust, isolates victims, and maintains institutional control over markets. The 2024 SEC charges and delayed justice in June 2024. The SEC charged Meta Materials executives, including former CEOs, with fraud tied to an at-the-market offering and market manipulation. While not directly naming MMTLP shorts, this exposed dilution tactics that echoed the preferred share debacle. Delays, including potential impacts from the government shutdowns in late 2025, have stalled broader accountability, leaving investors questioning if justice will ever arrive. Broader implications like Ponzi schemes, imperial fraud, and the path to restoration. MMTLP isn't isolated. Private equities, 100 billion plus continuation funds resemble self-dealing Ponzi structures, propping up overvalued assets through recycled capital. Counterfeit valuations in MMTLP parallel this. Lessons for investors: demand market resolutions over forced settlements that pay pennies. Geopolitically, Wall Street's imperial fund erodes national sovereignty. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution empowers Congress to punish counterfeiting. Naked shorting as economic warfare demands bilateral action and constitutional enforcement. Yet hope emerges in restorative processes and restorative promises of the golden age through deregulation. The MMTLP community, with 2025 petitions amassing signatures exposing in potential RICO violations, can inspire leaders like Greg McCabe to unlock real or grande value via open markets. And I wanted to bring someone very special on today, Doku, one of our own members, to the MMTLP community. So let's get after it, because this is exciting. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Today we've got a true legend of the MMTLP community joining us. Please give a huge welcome to the relentless voice of the community, Doku. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Great. Thank you very much for coming on. I super appreciate it. I know you're
thanks
busy.
for inviting me.
You're welcome. It's my first interview. I got some random questions for you. I'm going to try to go down chronologically through them and, take your time and answer them any way you want. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. The first set of questions focuses on the MMTLP timeline and regulatory failures. Question 1 is, can you walk us through the key origins of the MMTLP scandal starting from June 21st, June 2021, Torchlight-Meta Materials merger, and how the preferred stock dividend set the stage for the alleged fraud?
Gotcha. So I'll start off by saying I don't have all the dates memorized, and I unfortunately don't have them in front of me. I'm sure they're sitting on my computer somewhere. I just don't know where.
That's fine.
So what ended up happening is a company, Torchlight Energy Resources, had been shorted. This company, Meta Materials, wanted a seat on the NASDAQ. Just so happens that Torchlight had a seat on the NASDAQ. So they went ahead and came in. They merged the companies. And if memory serves me correctly, from the time the merger was announced and voted on, I think it was about a month or less for them to both merge both companies together.
Pretty quick.
Meta Materials, being a semiconductor company, though, wanted to spin out the oil and gas assets and sell them and then return whatever profits they made as a dividend to the Torchlight shareholders. Sure. It was going to be anywhere from $1 up to $20. That's what the CEO of Meta Materials and Torchlight told us at the time.
George Pelicaris.
Yeah. So the merger happens. We get the Series A preferred share placeholder, which again, it's a preferred share, but it was just a placeholder for the Torchlight shareholders. It was never intended to trade.
Right.
And then I remember one day we all woke up, and instead of the Series A preferred share, suddenly it's now MMTLP, and there's a price tag or a price next to it.
Yeah.
And I think it was like $1.20 or something like that when it very first showed up.
Yeah.
And I remember this specifically because guy at the time. He's not around that much anymore. Uncle Smokey. I remember
Yeah,
him, Syntax, Terry, Ollie, a few other people. They were on Spaces talking about it because we were all confused. We were like, wait a second. Why is this thing trading? Is this the special dividend? Like, do I have to sell it to get the dividend? Like, everyone was confused. None of us knew what the hell was going on.
sure. I'm one of those confused people. Sure.
Oh yeah, I remember looking at it at the time too, going like, do I just sell this?
Right.
I was seriously sitting there like, what do I do with this? Because this is out of the ordinary. This is very odd. It's very strange.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, if I remember correctly, uh, John Bird, I think he was talking to Charles Payne on Fox Business, but he had said that when he noticed it was trading, he contacted FINRA to ask them why is it trading, who made the market for it, and can you take it off the OTC? FINRA said, look, it's already trading. Their shares have already changed hands. Like we can't do anything about it.
The owner of the company didn't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, and obviously he didn't authorize it either. So
Right.
they were just as surprised as we were.
Mm-hmm.
So of course this thing starts trading, goes back and forth, and it goes from like $1.20, $1.50 up to like $2, and it goes back down, same range. And so, well, I'm going to get to that later since I know you have a question for that one. But so it starts trading, people start buying it. Right towards the end of trading, well, okay, let me back up real quick. So now because this thing is trading,
Yep.
no oil and gas company is going to come in and want to buy the assets because I don't know what's going on with it.
Of
Like
course
I'm
not.
not
Right.
like yeah, if I'm Exxon or Shell or somebody, I'm not going to buy this thing. Like no way.
Right.
So what McCabe decides to do instead is that they're going to take all the oil and gas assets and they're going to spit it out into a private company. That company was initially known as Oil Co. That was just the working name,
Right.
and that later became Nextbridge Hydrocarbons. So at the time of the date that the company was supposed to go private, 3 days prior, this was December 9th, I believe, at the end of trading, close of business day, FINRA comes in at the end, slaps the U3 halt on it. The last two trading days never happened. It was frozen. And then the company spins out, goes private, the QSIP gets deleted, and now here we are.
Remember sitting on the steps with my dad that morning. We were getting ready to go up to what we call the King's table. It was my trading room, 49-inch curved screen. I'm ready to
Right.
trade because the price is going to explode. The shorts have to cover, right? And it was a dark day. I remember my dad taking his computer and putting it back in his bag and being like, well, like, I guess I'll see you later. That was the
Yeah.
craziest thing ever, man. Because we all
Well,
thought we had till the 12th.
yeah, I mean, if I knew they were going to U3 halt it, I would have sold it on the 9th.
Everybody
Like
would have.
I know the price went down. I mean, we got up to a high of what, 290 or sorry, 1290.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the thing runs up from like $1.50, $2, and it goes to 1290 in like what, about a month, three
Yeah.
weeks, somewhere in that short of a time frame. So I
I had
mean,
half
he
I
was,
had $500,000 in my account, on paper from that
yep,
price. And because I had a lot of shares. Um, absolutely planned, but we'll get to that in a little. We'll get to that. We'll get all through that stuff. It's
yeah.
crazy. This is crazy, brother. Um, let me ask you another question. What role did FINRA play in assigning the MMTLP ticker in 2021? And why do you think fraud flags as early as November 29th, 2021 didn't lead to earlier intervention?
Well, so FINRA plays two roles here. The first one is obviously in order for something to trade on the OTC market or the New York Stock Exchange, the Nasdaq, whatever, FINRA has to assign a QSIP for it.
Sure.
So if two market makers want to trade something, whether it's supposed to trade or not, if you go and you get a QSIP for it, and you can start trading it on the OTC, boom, there you go. There's your QSIP. Shares trade, change hands, slap a price on it. You got a QSIP. Congratulations, you just made a market.
Right.
So, so the long and short, that's basically the role FINRA played, which, in my opinion, prior to giving a QSIP to this asset, FINRA should have looked into it and confirmed that this was something that was supposed to be intended to trade. They didn't do that.
Sure.
Hence, the CEOs didn't know about it. So they were, again, them being just as surprised as we were. So that's where FINRA screwed up first. They either didn't do their proper due diligence on that, or they knew and they just didn't care. Which a lot of us would speculate that no, it was not them just dropping the ball. It was very much intentional.
I allude to the second one. That's what I think. But
Well,
again,
and so through some of the FOIA emails, it looks like the second one might be more likely.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. How did the price surge in October, November 2022, driven by short squeeze speculation, contribute to the buildup of naked shorts? And what evidence from FOIA requests, getting to the FOIA request, supports claims of counterfeit shares?
Well, so that one's twofold. On the one hand, you have shorts that need to cover their positions. They can't do it if there's a Series A preferred share that's not trading. They need to get rid of that liability off the books. That goes all the way back to the Torchlight assets. So if they make a market for it, theoretically, if people turn around and start selling it, you can buy that, close out your position, boom, you're good. You can walk away. What ended up happening, though, is after about, I would guess it would be roughly a week, 2 weeks of watching this thing trade and kind of like digging around, trying to figure out what exactly is going on, people start getting this brilliant idea of, well, if it's trading and it's theoretically worth between $1 and $20 because special dividend, that's where we got that number from.
Right.
If I could buy something that's worth $5 for $1 or $1.20, I'm just gonna buy more.
Sounds
so
like a good deal.
People started buying more.
Sure.
And
myself
so that
included.
yeah, and so that kind of raises a bit of a problem, though. If people are buying more, there's only so many of these shares that should exist. I think the number is 136, 132 million, somewhere in that range. I don't have it in front of me, but somewhere in that range. We still don't know how many shares were actually traded, though. That's just the Torchlight shares. So if people start buying this, how are you going to cover your short position if people are buying it and not selling it?
You three halt it?
Yeah, well, I would argue that's the panic button.
Yeah.
But so, of course, what people start doing is, well, since this thing is trading and I can buy it, I'm just going to buy it. Like, all right, I'm just going to buy more. So instead, I would assume the intended effect of creating a market for MMTLP would be to kind of coerce shareholders into selling their positions. That might have happened to some extent, but not nearly the extent as people turn around and start buying it.
Yeah, they hoped. Right. Yeah.
Yep. So again, long story short, well, if the company's going to go private, we're going to get locked a second time. Quick, tank the whole thing, short it, get as much as you can, try to shake people out, trigger some stop losses, cover as much as possible. Boom, you three halt. Whatever you got's whatever you got. If you're still shorting it, sorry, you're screwed too.
Right. Do everything you can to bankrupt them.
Mm-hmm. Same old playbook.
Sickening. Been going on for decades, huh?
Yeah, but the only thing that sets MMTLP apart is obviously shorting is still going on in companies like GameStop, Overstock, AMC. I'm sure there's a litany of others out there, but those are just the three that come to mind. What sets us apart, though, is those are all still publicly traded companies.
We're frozen.
They're still shorting it.
Right.
Yep, we're frozen. So, and also a big area to look at too is the second role that FINRA would play in this, and I'd say this is kind of more of a, what's the proper term? Not tertiary, but more of a footnote.
Mm-hmm.
And this applies not just MMTLP, but the broader market as a whole in regards to naked shorting and how it undermines market integrity and stability.
Sure.
Is FINRA is very, very, very lax when it comes to enforcing failure to delivers. So a company can go 6 months with FTDs and FINRA doesn't do anything, which is a huge problem.
Do you think that might equate to their overseas bank accounts and the idea that they'll never be caught embezzling investors' money? Because I always looked at FINRA as essentially bank robbers, moonlighting as fiduciaries, because I don't really see them ever doing their job.
I mean, that definitely could be the case. I haven't really looked into it. There's other people within the community that have done a lot more digging on that aspect as well, but it does look like, at least to some extent, there is a practice of hiding assets in overseas markets because it's also not under FINRA's jurisdiction if you move money overseas.
Sure.
At least they would claim so, but my question to them would be like, all right, well, if the company's still U.S. based and they're going to move assets overseas and they're not going to deliver shares, you're not finding them or anything. If it's a U.S. based company that has the ability to trade in U.S. based markets, the company is still under your jurisdiction. Sure, the overseas market isn't, but that doesn't mean the company is free from being able to have repercussions brought against them. But again, I don't think FINRA is going to do anything about it, mostly because The people who sit on FINRA's advisory board and pull the strings also happen to be involved with those exact same companies. Kind of funny how that works.
Hey, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, funny
exactly,
how that
brother.
works.
Exactly. I'm glad to hear you say that. A lot of people don't make those connections, and it's pretty obvious. Um,
Well, one of the things I always say is I know who made the decision and I know why. It was post 2008 housing collapse and then also the flash crash. That was what, 2010, 2012, somewhere in that range.
yeah,
But this all started because of that, because somebody got the brilliant idea. Hey, all these guys who just tanked the market, that movie, the Big Short. In case you guys have ever seen it, that's what I'm talking about. All those guys who tanked the market, not the whistleblower, not Michael Burry, but the guys responsible for the housing market collapse. Someone got the brilliant idea of, well, if they orchestrated it, they obviously know how this works. So who better to stop something like that by happening in the future than putting the guys who created the problem in the first place in charge of the self-regulatory agency or the
sickening,
Financial Independent Regulatory Agency known as FINRA. So it's
sickening,
quite
Doku.
literally the fox watching the hen house.
Jeez, crazy.
Yeah, it's so backwards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Um, Following the December 13th, 2022 ticket deletion and NextBridge distribution, how have ongoing SEC investigations and FOIA denials perpetuated investor despair? And what parallels do you see to broader market gaslighting?
So in this one, so first off, the FINRA investigations, or sorry, the SEC investigations. I know they're looking into John, George, and Greg. I don't know what's going on with that. I haven't seen any stuff about that. If they did something wrong, okay, I'm sure SEC will get to the bottom of it. And I know a lot of people in the community are either, it's John, George, and Greg's fault or it's FINRA's fault. Like it seems like it's become very tribalistic in that way. My stance is this. I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that John, George, and Greg did anything wrong. But if they did, I would like to know about it because I really don't care who is, or I don't care about one side or the other winning. I'm not playing the tribal game of it's only one person's fault, not the other. If somebody did something wrong, you need to be held accountable regardless of who that person is.
And you want to
Right?
get
That's my
paid.
stance on that
And
one.
you want to get
Exactly.
paid. Yeah.
Exactly. So look, if they did something wrong, I want to know about it. But that being said, it does seem like the SEC is only focused on John, George, and Greg, but not looking at all into FINRA or the FINRA's advisory boards who created the QSIP, who the market makers for MMTLP were. They seem to not really care about looking into that the same way they care about looking into the CEOs of these three respective companies. And I find that to be a little suspect.
I call that diversion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect to things. The other aspect I would argue is how, in regards to parallels with broader market manipulation and investor despair. First off, obfuscating and gaslighting, we're all familiar with the terms.
Yeah.
It does seem like that plays a role in it, where you're trying to discourage people, like the magician's trick, look over here, not over here. Yeah, it seems like that's at least partially a motivating factor for what they're trying to do, because
Chill campaigns and stuff like that.
yeah, and of course they would be more than happy to go ahead and pass the buck and the blame off onto somebody else because nobody wants to get investigated themselves. Which again, if the SEC and FINRA are basically joined at the hip, who's gonna watch them? Who's gonna investigate them? Fox watching the hen house. Who watches the Watchmen? Well,
Right.
it's very much starting to look like that the entities involved with FINRA and the entities at the SEC have absolutely zero desire to look into themselves. So if you're part of that club, if you sit at that table, you basically are very well shielded. So you don't have to worry nearly as much as, say, some other random outside CEO who gets dinged for some paperwork error.
And you remember the Bernie Madoff situation after 10 years of fraud, him committing fraud. He had stood before Congress in one of their many stage theater questioning, and they, after 10 years, said they didn't have any findings of fraud. Meanwhile, the guy's doing prison for the rest of his life for fraud, while they're telling the general public that they had no findings of fraud. Well,
Yeah,
that's a little hard to believe, isn't it? Or like you said, they're obviously not doing their job. So,
well, again, I would almost go as far as to make the argument that a big reason that a lot of these individuals try to get positions on these advisory boards or work directly with these regulatory agencies is because it is effectively a get out of jail free card. For anybody listening, I remember probably what the first 2.5 years of this whole situation going on, FINRA kept coming out saying like, "Oh no, we have immunity." So it's like, all right, so you're telling me even if you did something wrong and it should be criminal for anybody else to do, you're immune just because you're FINRA? And their answer to that is yes, which again is ridiculous.
Right. And then we have, of course, have Congress that has a constitutional obligation to help its constituents to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And they refuse to do so under the premise that they don't want to micromanage or there's investigations going on. And it sometimes feels very hopeless to these people, to us, to all of us, to you, to me, that we will have resolution. But I know that we will because the truth doesn't change. And
So, well,
we're
and I would make the argument that sure, these congressmen and congresswomen would make the argument of like, well, we don't want to micromanage, let the SEC and FINRA do their job and everything. I think you just don't want to piss off the people that are donating to your campaigns.
there you go. Follow the
But
money.
that's just me.
Yeah, well,
that's just me, though.
That's just me too. So
Yeah,
I agree with you 100%.
I think that's a lot of us.
Yeah, brother, it is.
You know, Washington D.C. is the Washington D.C. machine is ultimately run by the fuel of K Street and lobbyist money.
Sure. Well, I mean, I believe this. I believe that the intelligence agencies actually run this country. I believe that, Congress and the Senate are they're just puppets. The puppet masters are behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Oh yeah, I know Trump calls it the deep state, but what he should call it is he should just call it the unelected bureaucratic state because that's what it is.
Sure.
Someone gets the office of presidency, they clear house. These mid to upper mid tier political bureaucrats. They end up getting appointed to their office by whoever's president at the time. And they end up staying there for the next 20 years, and then they make the claim, well, you can't get rid of them because you can't fire government employees, which is bullshit. But
Right.
that's the way the DC machine has been run for.
And they're not beholden
decades.
to you and I. They're beholden to their donors, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating.
Yep.
It's frustrating.
The three letter acronym agencies are the ones that really run the show.
Yep, you're 100%, brother.
Except with maybe some very, very, very rare exceptions. Right now, we're kind of living in that, or at least the closest thing to the exception that we've seen in at least my lifetime.
Well, we had talked about the geopolitical landscape, and I think Trump is taking many strategic steps to take down the old guard, the Bank of England, the Fed, Venezuela, where they've been pumping drug money and propping up the market through Venezuela. There's all kinds of variables, and I'm just like you. I'm excited. It's a crazy time to be alive, brother, and I'm just excited to see what's gonna manifest out of all this. But I personally think that these people, and I'm a religious person. I believe in God, and I believe that there's a demonic aspect to this, where you'd be willing to essentially destroy humanity to stay in power, and it's sickening. This isn't what we signed up for.
Oh, I don't disagree. I mean, I know what's the old saying? Something about people would rather burn down the kingdom just so they can rule over the ashes rather than relinquish power.
Right. That's great. I heard that one. I like it.
Yeah, and there's another one I saw today. Actually, I think this might be my new favorite. I want to say it was a Chinese proverb, but I could be wrong. But it was something along the lines of be careful who you let on your boat because some people might be willing to punch a hole in it and sink it just because they can't be the captain. It's like, I like that one.
Yeah, going back to the split in the community, sometimes it feels that way,
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it says our meeting's going to end in 10 minutes here because you and I are, yeah. I'll just call you back if that's all right.
Yeah. Or you can always do a part 1, part 2.
That's right. This is kind of going over something that you had mentioned earlier. Contextually, the June 25th, 2024 SEC fraud charges against Meta Materials executives highlighted market manipulation via the ATM offering. How does this fit into the larger timeline, and what delays like the November 2025 government shutdown mean for justice?
So the government shutdown one, I'm not really sure exactly how that plays into, mostly because the government could stay shut down for a year, but unless the U3 halt is lifted, which they can't do anymore because there's no QSIP. Right. But the fact of the matter is, MMTLP being frozen in time gives us at least one one advantage there. It's not going away.
Yeah,
So
right.
you guys can shut down for, again, a month, half a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, a decade. Next time you open back up, MMTLP is going to be right there on your desk. So
There's
unless you resolve
Doku.
it,
He's still
yeah,
there.
yep. So unless you guys resolve it, guess what? It's going to be right there.
Yeah.
As far as the investigations go, it's hard to say at this point in time now because MMAT is effectively bankrupt. So I'm not sure really what they're going to do there or what that aspect of things is. It might just be it might be an attempt at obfuscation. It might be an attempt at demoralization. It might just simply be coming up with any excuse to kick the can down the road. It, and again, pass blame so you can deflect blame away from yourself. I mean, I would say those are all reasonable conclusions to come to.
They could all be true simultaneously. Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Two things can be true at once. But the other aspect is, as far as crap, I'm trying to remember what the other part of the question was.
Oh, how does this fit into the larger timeline, and what delays like the November 2025 government shutdown mean for justice?
Oh, so yeah, so I touched on that one. I'm not really sure if I can go into any more detail about that simply because it would be the realm of speculation more than anything else. So I don't think the government shutdown is really going to play all that much of a role in this in the grand scheme of things.
I agree with you 100%. And so I got another question for you then. With grassroots efforts like the January 2025 petitions gathering signatures, what reforms do you advocate for to prevent future halts and ensure open market trading? Do you have any speculation on that or any ideas about that?
Honestly, I would say the biggest one would simply be FINRA enforcing the rules that are already on the books, which means you can't you can't mess with or you can't change documents, in-house after they've been submitted. You need to send them back so that they can get fixed. That goes in the whole, the process of the next rich hydrocarbons S1 being drug out as long as it is.
Right.
So there's that aspect to it. And I'd say the other aspect is FINRA needs to start enforcing failure to deliver laws. And specifically, the penalty needs to be done in such a way that if you're making millions of dollars by effectively breaking the rule and not following a failure to delivers, then the fine needs to be whatever you made plus 10% on top of that so you can remove the incentive so these financial institutions no longer engage in this type of activity. Or at least at a bare minimum, if you are going to borrow shares and sell them on the open market to short a company, you have to return those shares within 30 days. That's how it's supposed to be. You can't just sell something and then sit for 6 months and never cover your position. That's not how that's supposed to work. So if FINRA just did those two things, you would get rid of, I would argue, at least half of the market corruption that's going on right now.
In an ideal world, those things could easily be done. But the reality is, when you have the people that are shorting you into non existence actually sitting on the board that's supposed to be overseeing people get shorted into non existence, it's very doubtful that that would ever happen. Just like our government needs to be gutted, so does our fiduciaries, in my
No,
opinion.
exactly. And that's the thing. It's much easier to short a company into bankruptcy when you have access to millions, billions, if not trillions of dollars worth of capital. And so, yeah, these startup companies, they get shorted into oblivion. The companies that are involved in the shorting, they make a ton of money. And then guess what? You don't have to cover because the company doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I would even take it a step further and say that they don't really need any money if they're making shares out of thin air. If
Oh,
you
that's
have the
true.
if you
That's
have the
another aspect.
ability to if you have the ability to create shares out of thin air, because the brokerages are equally corrupt. Obviously, they're all in bed together. It's just deductive reasoning. It's very yeah, it's very unlikely that they're going to be held accountable by themselves.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the only area that pressure is really going to come from is going to be grassroots pressure against Congress. Because at the end of the day, Congress could do something about it. It's going to really boil down to, are you going to side with your constituency and the voters and the people who actually get you elected to office? Or are you going to side with the people who campaign on your behalf and donate money to your campaign? Because those are really the two aspects here. It's one or the other. And right now, at least over the past couple of years, they have been siding more with the donor class than they have their actual constituents. Because had they sided with the constituents, we arguably wouldn't be here at this point in time,
I
in
agree.
my opinion.
No, I don't know how you could disagree with that. Um, I think that I just don't. First of all, I don't trust Congress. I mean, I at all. And I think they're going to have their hand forced. I think these guys seem to get really uppity too whenever they're exposed for their
Yeah, they do.
wrongdoings. They don't like that, and this is an election cycle.
Oh,
Uh,
and that's the thing. They love the spotlight when it makes them look good, but ask them one question that's not pre-scripted that requires a more honest than usual answer, and suddenly they get real fidgety.
yeah, yeah, they
They don't like that.
no, they don't at all. Um, I'm going to end this right now because I'm going to run out of time, and I'll just call
Gotcha.
you right. I'll call you right back. Should I send you another link? Is that how I do it?
To be on the safe side, it'd probably be easier just to generate a new link.
Okay. Be right back, brother. Thank you. This is going great. I
Sounds
like
good.
it. This is good.
No, it's good.
Thank you. I'll be right back.
Gotcha.
Now, is this recording going to stay on here if I push end?
It should. It's been a long time since I've used Zoom, but I don't think it will go anywhere if you, I think you would have to delete it manually. You might want to download it just to be on the safe side.
I'm just going to push stop. So the second set of questions that I have focus on the broader implications, community impact, and systematic reforms.
Gotcha.
Question one, drawing from exposures like the Federal Reserve's role in economic manipulation, how does the MMTLP counterfeit share issue parallel currency debasement and regulatory collusion as seen in FOIA emails?
Well, in that one, so I'm not going to go into the Federal Reserve and the nature of fiat
That's
currency and
fine.
any of
Yep.
that. So, because I know there's actually a really good video on YouTube. It's a cartoon actually. It's called I believe it's How Money Works, something along those lines. But that's about 30 minutes long. If you want to know the history of the Federal Reserve and fiat banking, that's a very good video to watch.
Thank you. I'll go check that out. I'll go check that out when I get done. I like that stuff. I like to learn about that.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty decent deep dive, and I like that they put it in a cartoon format. There's some comedy in there. It makes it a lot more easy to digest. But I think it's important for videos like that because the topic matter can be so incredibly heavy and dense, and to be honest, it's infuriating. So,
And
so I guess to get to the
I'm a big picture thinker. So I like stuff like that. I like taking complex things and reducing them so a 7-year old can understand it. It
oh
really
yeah,
helps. So
so I would say the big takeaway, both that video and then also what goes into the MMTLP situation, is much in the same way that the Federal Reserve can effectively print money and debase the value of it, if that we know it as inflation. The same thing can be applied to shares. If
sure.
you, and it doesn't even have to be the counterfeit shares. It could be something as simple as a whale decides to dump a bunch of shares on the market. When you manipulate supply and demand like that, when you dump a huge supply of something on the market, of course it tanks the stock price, which also makes it very difficult for companies to raise money. Obviously, companies, if they need to get funding, this is where the naked shorting idea gets so incredibly destructive to market integrity, is because a lot of these companies that get targeted. I know the biotech sector. There we go. Is has this problem and has had it for a while, where these companies operate on a debt model basis. So they're not profitable for the first 5 to 10 years of their existence. So they rely heavily on stock offerings to raise capital so they can continue to fund their operations. Well, if you tank the stock price, not only do you have to sell more shares, which dilutes the shareholder, but if you don't, you have no ability to raise capital, which is how these companies are so easily bankrupted by shorting and failure to delivers. And
Right.
MMTLP or MMAT is no MMTLP and MMAT are no different to that.
So there's a lot of parallelism to the dilution of the dollar since
Exactly.
1913. So, like
Yep.
1913, I believe the Federal Reserve. What are we
Yep.
about
Federal
90,
Reserve Act, and then I think in
92%?
1862 or 1864, this was actually kind of a prelude to the 1913 Federal Reserve Act.
Tell me about it.
But so back, and I wanted to say it was 1864. I'd have to go back and check that. I'm going to do that while I'm talking real quick.
No problem.
But uh, there was a bill that was passed, and there was about a 1 or 2 sentence section in that bill where silver was no longer legal tender. So if you're wondering where all the Morgan silver dollars disappeared to leading up to the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, it's because silver was no longer considered a legal currency for a few decades leading up to that.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not talked about a whole lot. Let's see. It was 1873 with the passage of the Coinage Act. So the Coinage Act of 1873. This act ended the bimetallic standard by eliminating the right to have silver bullion coined into standard silver dollars, effectively restricting silver coins to limited legal tender status. Yep. So the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was not exactly something that was thought up overnight. There was a lot of moving parts leading up to that. Also, the same way that the gold, we still had a gold standard to some degree all the way up until 1960, 1970. So
no
it's
no more gold in Fort Knox, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It's all been a very slow push to phase out actual sound money, things that by sound money, I guess we should clarify. In order for something to be considered money or sound money, it has to fulfill two particular purposes. One is it has to be an accurate measurement. So that's why the Office of Weights and Measurements was so incredibly important, because you need to know if something actually weighs an ounce.
Sure.
So it has to be an accurate measurement, and it also has to retain value. If it doesn't do either of those two things in conjunction, it's technically not money. That's why when you look at your dollar bill, it says it's a Federal Reserve note. That's all it is.
Promissory to pay back a debt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know we were having that conversation about this the other day on the phone. A lot of people think that there's nothing that backs up the US dollar. Kind of true, but there is one very significant thing that actually does back up the US dollar, and that would be the United States military.
Uh-huh.
So there is something that backs it up.
It's worth something because we say it's worth something. What are you going to do about it?
Exactly. and to be fair, if your money's going to be backed by something that's not gold or silver, I can't think of anything better than 7 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers being parked off your shoreline. Like, yeah. I know the military-industrial complex people would very much not like to hear me say that, but look, if that's what backs up the dollar and keeps the oil market being priced in dollars, well, there's not really anything better.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great point, brother. This is sort of an obscure question. No, I'll get to that in a minute. In light of governmental corruption and fiscal management themes, such as vetoed audits for unaccounted funds, how does FINRA's stonewalling of 40,000 investor letters reflect systematic extortion and complicity?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me chew on that one for a second.
Want to come back to it? Or you can chew. We got plenty of time. Yeah. I'm in no hurry.
Honestly, I would say it really boils down to this, and it's kind of, I guess, a kind of two-part answer for this. We were talking about it earlier. But ultimately, it makes it very difficult for the average retail investor to have confidence in the regulatory agencies when they claim that their primary mission is to protect retail investors, when anytime like a group like us, MMTLP, says, hey, this doesn't add up.
Right.
You know, what was the extraordinary event? What's the share count? Who got it to trade? What were the involved parties? Did you contact any of the CEOs beforehand? Why or why not? When FINRA just responds with, well, we're not going to tell you. Judge orders you to release blue sheet trading data. Well, we're not going to do it. We're going to try to take it to a different court to get it thrown out. That didn't work.
The whole way you fight what you're supposed to be doing for us, right?
Yeah, exactly. So how on earth am I going to sit there and say I have confidence in the regulatory authorities to do the right thing and protect us from market fraud? You know, people like Andrew Left from Citron Research and Citron Capital. How are you going to protect us from people like that when even getting the most basic type of transparency is met with nothing but stonewalling, obfuscation, hesitation, and sometimes outright hostility? I mean, that, in my opinion, that's not how a regulatory agency that's trying to protect retail investors would act.
Nope. Disparaging people certainly isn't what their job is supposed to be, right?
Yeah, and especially when you say, well, I think you guys actually screwed the pooch on this one by allowing this thing to trade in the first place. You didn't inform any of us. None of us knew what MMTLP was for a long time. You didn't you didn't give
But
any
not
indication
even
that you.
allowing going behind the back of the actual owners of the business, not
Mhm,
contacting them, creating fraudulent paperwork, not signed by the owners of the company.
mhm. Or even just something as simple as there was no indication or warning of a U3 halt happening the third day before the last 2 days of trading, which should have been closed position only. I
Right,
mean, when you do stuff like that, you can in the same breath sit there and say, oh, it was for your own good. No, I'm pretty sure everyone who was investing in MMTLP knew exactly what was going to happen.
right. And
So,
unfortunately, we're not as stupid as they think we are. So that's crazy
yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
man. That's crazy.
It really is. And I know a lot of people will sit there and say, "Oh, well, FINRA didn't do anything wrong. You guys just didn't know what you were doing, blah 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 blah." Are you are you sure about that? How confident are you that that is actually the truth?
Right.
Because from what I can tell, it seems like the one who didn't know what they were doing would be FINRA and the SEC. And I say that not as speculation, but by their own admission to Congress that they did not know how to resolve the issue. So U3 halt it is.
That's a bombshell right there. So you're admitting by proxy that there is an issue.
Yes, they are.
So that's
Which
powerful. And that will come
which
into
here's
play.
well, and here's the crazy part about it. I know everybody's. I know this doesn't really apply now, but at the time, okay, you don't know how to resolve the issue. I can tell you exactly how the issue could have been resolved. You could have let it trade on the last 2 days as closed position only and let the market come to its conclusion and resolve itself because
Because
that's what markets do.
who was protected by the U3 halt, by the way? Were we protected? Because the last time I checked, my account, my money's been stolen and frozen for 3 years. Who was protected by the U3 halt?
Well, I think that's exactly the reason that they are so staunchly fighting against releasing the blue sheet trading data, and while they're also very staunchly against the consolidated audit trail system, because with those two things, you can very easily trace back and figure out who the involved parties are, which then by extension would answer the question of who did the U3 halt really protect?
Right.
Because it
Exactly.
wasn't me, I can tell you that
It
much.
wasn't me. Wasn't me, though. Wasn't 65,000 of us either. Wow, it's crazy stuff. This is
Well,
kind of a I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, even though they always kind of most of the time we pan out to be right a lot of the times. But the declassified MK Ultra. Do you know a little bit about MK Ultra?
I do.
The declassified MK Ultra details on induced despair via psychological subversion. How does the gaslighting mirror the regulatory denials in MMTLP? And what does it say about institutional control over markets?
Well, I would say that's actually a pretty straightforward one. When you when you stonewall, when you refuse to release trading data, when you refuse to be transparent, when you just pull actions like a U3 halt, which is an extraordinary event without saying what the extraordinary event is that warranted such a halt, but you don't answer any of these questions, and then also turn around and say, well, we're immune, so even if we did anything wrong, you can't take us to court. Yeah, that kind of makes people despondent. It very much it destroys investor confidence. And I would argue it makes it a lot easier to discourage people from trying to pursue the release of data or pursue some degree of transparency any further because as the saying goes, and I know it's really popular right now, nothing ever happens.
Right.
When people have that mindset, they lose their will to fight. That's an old tactic. It's not just with MK Ultra, the US government or the regulatory agencies. Demoralization has been a very effective psychological weapon for centuries. Yeah. Easiest way to defeat an army is you demoralize it.
Sure. I
Yeah.
also I also noticed throughout the thread of the community, and the thread is getting thinner over time, where people have, sort of peered into the abyss, so to speak, and they've come to the realization that those that they thought were men of integrity or honor their entire lives aren't who they profess to be. When everybody, I was one of the first person. I don't know if you've ever checked out my YouTube channel back in the day, but I was one of the first people that stepped up and, just sort of the micro expression of the whole situation coming out of Congress. It was very apparent to me in the beginning that they were by no means doing anything but holding them people closely abreast, manipulating them, containing them. I knew this because I've had sort of a dark past in my life, and I've unfortunately been able to kind of peer into the abyss, and I just, it's very difficult when you have that level of skepticism to be indoctrinated and manipulated to see people for anything other than what they truly are. And it's sort of in a sick way or a dark way, maybe a breath of fresh air for me to see everybody's eyes really being opened up within this community, even those that I found to be relatively naive in the beginning are like, oh my God, these people really aren't there to help us. These people really aren't fiduciaries. And it's at the same time, it's obviously it's heartbreaking because you feel powerless. You're crying out to the people that are supposed to be helping us, as you spoke about, are actually working against us. And
Well, that's the thing. The posturing is one thing, but whenever the curtain gets pulled back and you see what actually is really going on, it can be enlightening in probably one of the worst ways. But it does teach you one thing: be very, very careful who you trust, and also question everything, even if it's from someone you trust. Question it.
Question it.
Yep. Also,
Question it.
never meet your heroes. They probably aren't who you think they are.
Right. Yeah. Being betrayed by people, and it makes you question yourself. It makes you question your own naivety. But you can't, like you said, we didn't do anything wrong, Doku. We didn't do anything wrong. We signed up to trade in the market and we got ripped off.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit this is an admission of my own naivete, but never in a million years would I have expected that the last 2 days of trading would have been stopped due to a U3 halt. I actually wasn't even aware what a U3 halt was at the time. So that was a bit of a shocker. I remember I was on my way to a Christmas party, and I'm sitting there in the car in the passenger seat, watching my phone, watching the thread, and I see that notification pop up, and I forgot who was the one that I guess at the time retweeted it or reposted it, but it was the U3 halt announcement, and I went, "What the hell is that? And what does it mean for us?"
Right.
And then I looked into it, and I looked into it, and my mood immediately shifted. Like it was it was probably one of the worst realizations because it's like, wow. So
You essentially
I
knew
think I
something
can,
nefarious was going on.
yeah, it's like now I actually understand how the AMC and the GameStop people feel whenever Robinhood takes away the buy button as soon as the stock price starts moving up, and
Right.
then as soon as they reinstate trading, it gets immediately kicked right back down.
Yep.
Like as you were saying, the broker dealers are just as bad. Like,
They're all in on it, Doku. They're all in on it.
yep, and that's one of the big issues, and I think this is kind of part of one of your previous questions. But it's very, very difficult to have any confidence in the market or want to invest in it when you know that effectively somebody can change the rules at the last minute with zero explanation. And it doesn't have to be FINRA doing it. It could simply be Robinhood takes away the buy button. Boom, kills buying pressure, completely
Sure.
kills the momentum of the stock, sends it right back down.
I mean, people say the stock market's like the casino, but I've played on a roulette table and the numbers are always in the same place. It's
Yeah,
fixed.
exactly. Yeah, it's like no, I actually think casinos have a lot more integrity than our market regulators and participants do it, at least as far as the institutional side of thing goes.
I agree. What do you I just got a couple more questions for you. If you got a couple more minutes.
Of course.
Actually, I got one more question. We'll end it with this one. This is a good question. Um, it's about private equity Ponzi schemes and self-dealing, like the $100 billion continuation funds. Echo MMTLP share dilution. What lessons can investors learn about counterfeit valuations and the need to hold on? We're gonna back up. I'll edit that one out. All right.
All right.
No, actually, the other ones come up too. So I'll just start over with that one. Um, Private equity. Take three.
Don't worry, I know the feeling. I had that happen already. So I'll pass it off to you, I guess.
Get tired, brother. Private equity Ponzi schemes and self-dealing, like the $100 billion continuations funds, echo MMTLP share dilution. What lessons can investors learn about counterfeit valuations and the need for market resolutions over settlements?
Okay, so this is going to sound like something obvious, but it's probably the
Please.
most important takeaway, at least for me, is when you have things like this that are allowed to occur in the market, it's very hard to actually trust the market valuation of something, knowing that it could be very easily manipulated and not necessarily indicative of what the true market value should be. So again, it goes back to investor confidence, where if I see something that's absurdly cheap, the first question I have to ask myself is, why is it so incredibly cheap? Like, you can't just go off of PE ratios or things like that anymore. You can't go off of the balance
Right.
sheets and the basic fundamental or technical analyses. You have to actually go in and do more digging. Was there something in the news that sent it down? Was there insider selling? Those are the normal things you would look at. But now any investor would have to look at this and go, okay, what's the short interest? What are these shares available to be sold? What's the borrow rate? You have to look at those things, because if you're not, you're like a lamb to the slaughter. Like, you're going to get crushed.
Sure.
Same thing if something goes up ridiculously fast. You got to ask yourself why. Is there something actually driving the price? Is it the company? Is it something legitimate, or is it simply just price manipulation? You
Right.
know, short and distort and pump and dumps are far too common in the market right now, but it seems like certain entities can do it and get away with it, while others get completely lambasted and destroyed. It seems like enforcement against these types of things is extremely selective, and again, that goes back to killing investor confidence. And if investor confidence is low, it kills market momentum because there's no liquidity.
Sure. To add on to that, the symptoms, but to add on to that, I of course would always advocate for a market-based resolution over a settlement, because if you do a settlement, you've essentially set the stage for a playbook that mirrors what they've done to us. And of course, we don't want that to happen to anybody. And that doesn't seem like much justice to me, to sit down and do an NDA for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
signed up to. I signed up. I'm a trader. It's what we got in the market to do, is trade stocks, not sit down at the table with a bank robber and have them give us back a fraction of the money that they stole from us. That would be a wonderful thing. They would win, and they would
No, and
continue that playbook. And so
that's exactly what I was echoing earlier with the penalties for failure to deliver. It needs
exactly,
it needs to remove the incentive, because if I get fined $1 million, but I make $100 million and I get nothing, that's a slap on the wrist.
pay to
If
play, pay to play.
Yeah,
Right.
as long as I keep my market credentials and my seat at the table, I'm going to break that rule every single time. There's no incentive for me not to.
Why wouldn't
I
you?
mean, except maybe like a moral standard, but let's be honest,
I
morals
don't
don't have
think
a
they have
place in
it.
the
Yeah, they
market.
don't have any of them, do they?
Yeah, morals
Um,
don't have any place in the market. It's all about money.
so I got three more questions.
Gotcha.
With restorative promises of a golden age through deregulation, how can the MMTLP community inspire figures like Greg McGabe at Nextbridge to create real hydrocarbon value in the Oro Grande Basin?
Hmm. Honestly, I think he's actually already answered that question in the first place, where when the community came together to do everything that it did, which, regardless of what side of the coin you're on, you got to admit, it has been a lot of time, effort, and energy put into these things, and the amount of information that we've been able to uncover, the the type of methods, how to build relationships, how to submit FOIA requests. If you see somebody working twice as hard when they don't need to, it motivates you to work just as hard, if not harder.
Inspiration for sure. And what a
Yep.
great man he's been. He doesn't
Yep.
have
It
to
helps
be
keep.
loyal like that to us. He's a good
Yep.
man.
Well, that's the thing. Loyalty inspires loyalty.
Sure. Two more questions. We're running out of time here on the thing again. Oh, goes by quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Wow. Geopolitical realignment and sovereignty erosion tie into Wall Street's imperial fraud. How does MMTLP exemplify this? And what bilateral and constitutional actions, e.g., Article 1, Section 8, could enforce counterfeiting punishments? And I kind of going over something you spoke about earlier a little bit.
Hmm. Again, I would say that one. I'd say that one could be pretty easily explained as the MMTLP community, along with some other communities out there, have effectively turned into watchdog and whistleblower groups when it's, in reality, as far as the institutional side of the financial world was concerned, we were supposed to be dumb money, sheep, do
Right,
nothing. Yeah.
right.
And instead through educating ourselves, through listening to others, and just collective community building and working with each other and talking to each other and sharing information as freely and openly as possible, something FINRA and the SEC could learn from, we have effectively become a grassroots watchdog movement.
True. I was actually looking at the Constitution, and in the Constitution is there something that mirrors rules that FINRA suggests they are immune to, or at least upholding them. If they break their rules, they have immunity, blah, blah, blah. Nobody has immunity for breaking the Constitution. So I want to look a little bit further into that. It's one
Yeah, I was
thing
going
to
to say
say,
I can't think of anything. I
I
don't
can't
think there
either off the
I
top
don't
of my
think there
head.
is.
Something to think about though.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's a thread worth pulling on. I haven't considered that, but that is a good question.
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I
Um,
would I would like to dive down that rabbit hole and do a little digging to see if there's anything in there. That might be that might be something useful for Grok to look into. One of the one of the few times where I say we can actually use AI for something useful instead of generating a bunch of memes.
well, my dad actually brought it up to me. It was his idea, but I thought it was kind of a fascinating thought.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's a very good question. It never would have occurred to me to ask that question, but it is a good one because if there's nothing in the Constitution, then what is granting FINRA or the SEC the authority to claim such a thing?
right,
It outside of, an arbitrary rule we made up for ourselves.
exactly. And that would also prompt Congress possibly to do their job, maybe.
Yeah, well,
Last question, brother, and then we'll let you go. I appreciate you coming on today. As liberation vows aim to end corruption, what role do ongoing community exposes in RICO validations play in realigning the system, and why reject non-market resolutions in favor of open trading?
I would say the big one there is, I'd say the best example for us would be the ability to issue FOIA requests, which we have done in the thousands. I believe we're at what, 40,000, 44,000, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But the thing is, all we need is to just get one. And
That's it.
so, for example, like in the most recent FOIA request, we can see the Financial Information Forum, which represents broker dealers and the institutional side of the financial markets, directly contacting the SEC non-transparently, but behind closed doors, asking them to not approve the S1 filing for Nexpert hydrocarbons because if it was approved as written, they cannot guarantee that they could acquire the stocks or subsequent warrants on behalf of their customer base, which is effectively a fancy way of admitting there's more shares that we owe than we can actually get our hands on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge thing right there. So if we can get information like that, that proves not just outside of speculation, but black ink on white paper.
Sure.
No, this isn't just a gut feeling. This isn't just speculating that this happened. No, we can actually prove that it did. We have the
Concrete.
email and the FOIA request to do it. That is something you can take to Congress and at least get the ball rolling because it's no
Sure.
longer just about please look into this. No, we did it. We did all the looking into it for you. We did the legwork. We got the hard evidence. We have the smoking gun. Then we can hand it off to Congress or the DOJ, and they can do something with that.
Right.
And that's huge. And other
It's
other
huge.
communities should do the same thing because again, a lot of this type of market fraud, corruption, manipulation, it it's speculation. I mean, it's very, very reasonable to come to these conclusions, but it's a lot different when you actually have hard evidence that you can bring in front of a Congress member because that is now something that they can do something with, and they're not
Sure.
staking their reputation on just trust me, bro.
Right.
And so again, much like with the FOIA request, yeah, we have to file this many times, but all we need is one. It's the same thing with members of Congress. We could talk to every single person, and 99% of them can choose to do nothing about it. But we get one person to actually pick up that sword and go fight that dragon on our behalf. That's all you need.
Right.
Because if one person does it, then there's probably going to be a lot of other members of Congress that are going to look at that and go, you know what? I want a piece of that pie too. It's going to be good for my reputation. I can campaign on that. So they'll jump on it too, because nobody wants to be the first one to stick their neck out. But once you have one Spartacus, everybody's Spartacus.
Great thoughts, man. Thank you.
No,
I've
thank
had
you
a
for
great
having me.
time, brother. We're running out of
Yeah, it's been
time.
fun.
I'll see you soon, brother. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Have a
Cheers.
good night, Doku. Cheers to
You
you.
too.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.
Sounds good.